is my guest tonight. Stay with us. We also give you an update on the tragic incident, the killing of the Chief Executive Officer of the Royal Cozy Hills Hotel, popularly known as Jirapa Dubai, in the Upper West region, where police have arrested 7 suspects so far. We'll give you some details on that. Stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. Also, as your election command center, we begin a series to track the new Patriotic Party's 2020 campaign manifesto promises. We have a new segment called the Manifesto Check for you here on Ghana Tonight. For that purpose, and tonight we started the journey on Manifesto Check. And there's a good reason why we are doing so, because this document, the Manifesto of the MPP, defines that relationship or the contract that you, the voting population, have with the government of the day. The reason why we surrendered our sovereignty through an election to them. We'll be finding out whether they have done what they said they will do ahead of they bringing another set of promises in another manifesto for 2024 election. That's the responsibility we want to take wholeheartedly here on your Election Command Center. As always, let's settle for some of the stories that made headlines over the last 24 hours. You're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and X. Let's get talking.
Two more suspects have been arrested in connection with the murder of the Chief Executive Officer of the Cozy Hill Hotel at Jirapa in the Upper West region, bringing to 7 the number of arrests in connection with the murder. The CEO, Eric Johnson, was found in a pool of blood in one of his hotel rooms on Sunday, February 11. A team of investigators from Accra was deployed to partner with the Upper West Regional Crime Scene Management Team to ensure that the perpetrators are apprehended and prosecuted. The 7 suspects, all workers of Royal Cozy Hills, have been detained and assisting police in investigations are Dokuri Foster, Brima Kasim, Bayo Felix, Michael Kluge, and Kumbata Kweku Charles, Tuze and Favor Nobi. The body of the late businessman has been deposited at the Wa Regional Hospital morgue, awaiting autopsy. Newly sworn-in assembly members have implored government to ensure the timely release of the common fund for district assemblies. They observe the continuous delay in the release of the funds impedes local community development. The assembly members were responding to a call on them by the Minister of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, Daniel Kwekuboche, to live up to their core mandate of bridging the development gap in their various electoral areas.
The internally generated funds all stay in the assembly for the assembly's work. So that is done. We all have to question that and find out why. The other aspect of the executive that we have to admit is to also ensure that the finance ministry releases the money to the common fund as regularly as it should.
Former Chief Justice and Council of State member Georgina Theodora Wood has urged assembly members to enforce planning standards, compliance laws and regulations governing human settlement and spatial planning. She was speaking at the inauguration of Accra Metropolitan Assembly members.
It is my ardent hope that you will help enforce planning standards and compliance of the land use, as well as other regulations governing human settlement and planning.
The Chamber for Local Governance is advocating for the allocation of a portion of the District Assembly's Common Fund to Assembly members for purposes of in their electoral areas. This, the Chamber argues, would enhance the relevance of Assembly members in the country's governance structure.
Assembly members who are bona fide members of the Assembly members who are the direct representatives of the people in their respective electoral areas, do not even have one peso allocated to them in terms of the DACF. And for me, I think that is most unfortunate.
Former president and flag bearer of the NDC is urging minority MPs to be vigilant and resist policies government intends to introduce in its final lap as elections are due in 9 months. Addressing the retreats of the NDC MPs in Ho, John Mahama commended the MPs for standing up to the government in fighting harsh conditions imposed on the ordinary Ghanaian.
Your return is opportune and timely, as it affords you an opportunity to maintain even greater vigilance and oversight over a government that is increasingly becoming desperate and will no doubt be attempting to ram draconian policies down the throats of Ghanaians. On the evidence of what we've seen so far, I believe I speak for the generality of Ghanaians when I say that you in the minority have lived up to expectation.
Well, there's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight, and this is your Election Command Center. Coming up next, we hear an expert view on the appropriateness or otherwise of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's verdict on the Bank of Ghana financing government expenditure. And senior economist and director of research at the Institute for Economic Affairs, Dr. John Kwachi, is our guest on Ghana Tonight. Stay with me on this matter because we're going to stay the steam a bit further on the Vice President and the NPP's flag bearer for the 2024 elections, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. He has come under strong criticism for praising and also the praises that he showered on the Bank of Ghana for financing government budgets. And this is a conversation that even prior to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's speech last week, there's been consistent conversation as to whether the Bank of Ghana did the right thing, because we're talking about over 60 billion cedis loss that the Bank of Ghana had to carry on its books as a result of that singular decision. Now, some of those who declared support for him, including Kofi Bentil of Imani Africa, find that part of his vision statement not too much in good place, but others have also been reacting to the statement. But first, let's take a listen to exactly what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia said with respect to the Bank of Ghana's financing of government budget between the period of 2020-21 and what we saw on their books in 2022. Take a look.
I must at this stage salute and give particular recognition to the Bank of Ghana, which has come under unfair criticism for taking the necessary measures which help pull the economy back from the brink. The Bank of Ghana provided needed financing to the government at that critical moment. What the Bank of Ghana did was very responsible in putting the interest of the good citizens of Ghana first. The data which is available shows that the financing provided to the government by the Bank of Ghana was temporary. The Bank of Ghana has provided zero financing to government in 5 out of the last 7 years. Zero financing in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, and 2023. The Bank of Ghana financing of government in the COVID-19 year of 2020 and the liquidity crisis year of 2022 was because of the domestic and global crisis, with underperforming revenue and no access to international capital markets. The good news is that the data shows that the economy is recovering from the crisis we faced.
Well, so that's Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's verdict on this decision by the Bank of Ghana, in fact, to go beyond even that allowable regime of 5% to finance government budget. There's been a lot of conversation on this matter. Dr. John Kwachi is the Director of Research at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Let me put it on record that Dr. John Kwachi has worked at the Bank of Ghana for 20 years and also consulted for the IMF over a long period of time. So we're talking about one of the respected economists, not just in Ghana, but globally. It's one of them. He's joining us on Zoom for a conversation on this. Dr. John Kwachi, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. It's always a privilege having you. You say that the New Patriotic Party is at a crossroads and that the party has presided over, quote, a boom and bust economy. What exactly are you talking about in this caption that you put out in your article?
First, when I say at a crossroads, they are nearing the end of their 8-year, term, which in Ghana has become like, a regular cycle. I mean, every party stays on for 8 years and then they have to move on. So they are nearing the end of their 8 years. And then that's what I mean by the at a crossroads. They want to extend it to, for another 4 years or even more. So they are at a critical juncture, of their political life. When I say they have presided over an economy, a boom and a bust economy, I think Dr. Bawumia himself admitted that, during their first term, especially 2017 to 2019, they performed, pretty well. I mean, they managed the economy prudently and efficiently, and achieved, very good results in the sense that all the key macroeconomic indicators were trending in the right direction. But then for the period 2020 to 2022, he said they were hit by COVID-19 and then the Russia-Ukraine war. And then because of some huge payments that they had to make in respect of, the financial sector, bailout, and then also the excess energy capacity payments that they inherited. Because of these exogenous shocks, his claim is that the economy was taking off gear, and therefore all the macroeconomic indicators, deteriorated. But in 2023, they are coming back. They are trying to stabilize, the situation. So that's exactly what I have described, in my first, paragraph.
I see. But the point you make, that last point you make about what exactly accounted for the economic crisis that we've been living in over the past couple of years. If you listen to the science of government, in fact, if you listen to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia himself in that speech, there's a lot of credit that's taken by government for the good economic indicators or the economic performance between 2017 and 2019. And continuously they've ascribed that to the good economic management of the economy by the government. I'm talking about the NPP. But from 2020 to what we're experiencing now, they're saying that it's as a result of the twin impact of the Russia-Ukraine war and then also the COVID-19 pandemic as well. You are an expert. Now, would that cut it? Is it the only reason for what the economic quagmire that we find ourselves in now?
In the first period of 2017 to 2019, when the economy was in a favorable trend, I have admitted that some of their policies must have contributed to that. In other words, they tried to impose fiscal discipline on themselves by enacting the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Mm-hmm. So that, helped them. And we must, credit them with that. But I also mentioned that there were also some favorable conditions, in the global environment, even locally. Oil production increased. I think that they brought a new oil field into production. So 2017, you will see that the growth rate, shot up to above 8%. This must be attributed largely to the oil, output, the higher oil output. And then the IMF program which they continued, was also in place. And therefore, the program itself imposed some discipline on them. So, my point is that they themselves contributed to the favorable economic development, but they also benefited from, favorable, their favorable environment. Now you come to 2020 to 2022, when we all admit the effects of COVID-19, Russia-Ukraine war, disrupting, supplies chains around the world, which pushed up oil and food prices, and it affected every country. So naturally, Ghana also suffered as a result. But we must also recognize that, and then we also recognize the energy sector payments, and then the financial bailout costs. But we must also, recognize that this was a period that the government also resorted to, large-scale borrowing, especially on the international capital markets, because now we had gone out of, the IMF program. So it's like we were on our own. And we were all being warned. I mean, the government was being warned that, we were getting into a debt crisis, a debt unsustainability. IMF used to warn us all the time. This was a time that government also embarked on, massive spending on its flagship, programs. And then, if you look at our revenue performance, we have never done very well. So it was a period that we did not also collect enough revenue, even domestically, and we prefer rather to borrow. So we made these policy mistakes also, So the point I'm making is that when you take credit, for the good performance, when it comes to the bad performance, you must also take responsibility for it. That's what, other governments do. You cannot say that, this time around, it was all due to COVID. It was all due to Ukraine, Russia war. And that I didn't do anything wrong. This is what I'm trying to bring out, that yes, we must admit that exogenous factors played a part, but there were also some domestic policy failings that must be recognized.
So that's a critical point you make. So when they take credit for the good indicators, there must be some responsibility also taken for the bad situation or the economic crisis that we find ourselves in. It cannot just be shoved on just Russia, Ukraine, and then COVID-19. That's the concern that you raised there.
Concerns me. It should concern everybody. And it is when somebody speaks to it, like the vice president has come out to say, to put the, to tell us what the record is. And then it's up to, some of us, who know the facts, also to come out and say, these are the facts. So it's not like me, I'm not even trying to challenge anybody. My business is just to put the record straight so that I inform the public, Ghanaians, and they make the judgment for themselves. That is the purpose for me writing this thing, is to say that let's state the true state of affairs. Let's get the record straight. Because you see, when you listen to only politicians, they could be economists, professional economists and all that. But when you listen to only the politicians, they always, it's not just the NPP, it's not just Dr. Baumia, they always try to slant, the story, the figures in their favor. That is what all politicians do. But me, I am a professional economist. I'm an independent, person, and I need to come out and explain the facts as they are to the Ghanaian public so that they can make their own judgment. Now, it doesn't matter if it is the NDC or NPP that makes some kind of declaration. Whoever makes it, if I feel like, as an economist, I don't understand, or I don't think that is the right thing, and that is being slanted by the politicians. I'll come out and try to straighten it.
See, and the fact you put it out there, the facts as you have done from a professional perspective, doing this analysis as they are, is that the economic crisis that we find ourselves in right now cannot be just about the chorus of the Russia-Ukraine war and then also COVID-19. Certainly something more than that could have gotten us to this point, or this crisis we've been experiencing over the period. Dr. Kwachi.
Not only that, I've continued to, stress that, because I've said that there was the excessive borrowing, there was the excessive expenditure on flagship programs, and the size of government, which is still in place. The fact that we don't collect enough revenue in this country, and I will attribute, the problem to government, the government in power, because we know that there are so many avenues. You don't have to even increase taxes. You need to broaden the tax net, yes, but there are so many loopholes in the tax system that can be plugged. In fact, Dr. Bawumia himself, in his speech, said that our tax to GDP ratio is just about 13%, and he said the World Bank has estimated that we could double that just by, increasing the efficiency of our revenue collection and taking allied measures. He said the World Bank said we could double it to over 25% and getting closer to what our peers are doing. So he himself admitted that. So if that is the case, then we should be able to say that the government also, did not do everything right. Because you also realize that some of our peers who have experienced similar shocks like us, Russia-Ukraine war, COVID-19, maybe they didn't have financial sector payments and the others, but these big shocks, they have not experienced the same degree of crisis that we had, which means that we went into the crisis with greater, more severe vulnerabilities, and the IMF even has recognized this and said it in all their the program documents, that we went into the crisis, into these shocks with greater vulnerabilities. And that's why, the shock affected us a lot more than, many of our peers.
And you see, Dr. Nkwachi, when you talk about the economy, it's not so much about what is said. It's a lot more about how people feel. And that's the collective individual economies of the Ghanaian people, which obviously makes up the collective economy that we're talking about as a country, beyond the indicators, the statistical indicators that we normally hear. But Dr. Bawumia has been talking about the Bank of Ghana's decision to finance expenditure of government, and that's what we just played to you. He said that, quote, that decision was a very, very good one, and that the Bank of Ghana has faced unfair criticisms. They provided the needed financing to government at such a time that was needed between 2020 and then also in 2022, and that the Bank of Ghana was very responsible in doing that. Is it just about the BOG lending to government, or we're talking about the magnitude, the quantum of the lending that we saw over the period?
Dr. Bawumia, these sentiments, the praise, that he had for the Bank of Ghana. The Minister of Finance himself expressed similar sentiments a few months back. But, for the minister, that's his position is not surprising to me, because he is a beneficiary of the monetization of the deficit. He's a direct beneficiary. So what do you expect him to do? He will certainly come out to justify it. And then also, maybe the damage that can be caused by excessive, central bank financing of the budget, he may not appreciate it as much as those of us who are central bankers, because maybe, he has never been a central banker. Okay, but when it comes to Dr. Bawumia, myself, and the governor, who have been central bankers, and we know that the most inflationary source of financing the budget is when the central bank, steps in to do it, because that's what we call effectively money printing. It is the most inflationary, it is the most currency destabilizing way of doing it. But the argument is that the economy was in crisis, the government was short of, liquidity. Ghana had been locked out of international capital markets. So there was no other way, and the Bank of Ghana had to step in to save the economy from collapse. Well, my central banking training didn't teach me that. The government, of course, the Bank of Ghana Act makes provision for Bank of Ghana to provide emergency assistance to government as when necessary. And there's a limit. There's a reason why they put a limit on it, 5% of last year's revenue, because they know that source is destabilizing. Okay, but if even because of an emergency you are to go beyond that limit, if you had gone to 10%, even 15%, I would have said, oh, maybe that is not even too grievous. That's not too severe. But by my own calculation, it was like over 50% of last year's revenue that they advanced to government. To me, that is excessive. Look, government in that kind of situation, there are so many things they could have done. They could have taken, undertaken serious, adjustments, fiscal adjustments, cut down government expenditure, cut down government size, suspend the flagship programs. You could have done a lot of things that would not have required so much money, expenditure. But if we were not prepared to do that, then you say, oh, let me go take central bank money. When the central bank knows that its money potentially will cause inflation, will destabilize the currency. And not surprisingly, in that year, 2022, we experienced record inflation of 54%. And the currency depreciated by November 54%. As if these numbers, I don't know whether you can say there's coincidence, but and then because they intervened in the last month of the year, so by December there has been some correction on the currency. That's why the depreciation for the year came to 30%. But by November, it had gone up to 54%. So I think what the central bank, the governor, and Dr. Bawumia and the minister on one side are telling us is that the inflation that central bank financing caused, the currency depreciation, are a good price to pay for not destabilizing the economy. By that they mean that maybe we wouldn't have had the lights on, we wouldn't have had the fuel constantly, we would have had maybe water flowing. That's the point they are making. But to me, as a central banker, I cannot buy that.
Right.
And that's exactly the point I have made here, that that's not something that anybody should comment unless you belong to the other side. But for me, I cannot accept that.
And that's from your professional perspective, and with all your experience, we do respect that a lot. Professor, in fact, Dr. John Kwakye, appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is not the end of this all-important conversation with you, because there are a number of things and other aspects that we'll touch on going forward. And I know that you're going to make the time for us. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Dr. John Kwache is the Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA. He's also worked at the Bank of Ghana for 20 years. So if he talks about being a central banker, that's exactly what he means by that. And also consulted for the International Monetary Fund, IMF, for a considerable number of years as well. So he comes to the table with a lot of experience and knowledge in the area of economics that we're talking about. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, your Election Command Center. We begin a series to track the new Patriotic Party's 2020 campaign manifesto promises. We have a new segment on this show, and it's starting tonight. The Journey for Manifesto Check. That's the name of the segment. Let it stick in. Manifesto Check is starting tonight here on your Election Command Center on Ghana Tonight. And for that purpose, just to stay the steam on the election and matters arising. This is your Election Command Center. This is it. It is your Election Command Center. Tonight, we put the spotlight on some promises that were made in the education sector, seeking to find out whether or not they have been fulfilled or otherwise. And there's a reason why, ladies and gentlemen, because the cost of democracy is borne by you and I, the Ghanaian people, in many ways. Take a look at this. We surrender our power as citizens through this an election, which is going to be happening in the months ahead of us. That's your vote, your power. You queue long hours and day of unfavorable conditions to vote. You surrender the nation's resources to the politician to manage on your behalf, and you and I, our behalf. We pay our taxes as well. You take care of the politician. I mean, you pay their rent, you pay their salary, and so many allowances, including even their cable TV allowance, travel allowance, and all of those things. Even when you are not enjoying those allowances, you pay for it. You and I pay for it. The politician uses our resources to fulfill the promises that they make to us. You see, and that's the irony of democracy. In fact, we even paid their retirement package as well. My colleague Dennis Pauberry-Wedam is here with me, and look, we're going to do this together every step of the way till December 6th, because December 7th is election day. But here on your Election Command Center, we start this on Ghana Tonight. We call it the Manifesto Check. Dennis, isn't democracy so interesting? You know, I come to you when I make the promise to you that, you know what, I'm going to buy you this mobile phone, right, on Valentine's Day. and then I take your money to buy the gift on Valentine's Day and I present it to you.
Yes.
That's what democracy is, isn't it? Because they come to you with all these promises. It's not as if the free SHS is being funded by the president's own money.
Not at all.
Or the roads that are constructed is the president that uses his money to construct the roads, and all the promises that we see in there, all the tax. So at every point, the citizen is bearing the cost of democracy, is it not?
Exactly so. And we have a stake in this democracy. So we have every right to determine how it goes. Like we say, your thumb is your power.
Promoting power.
Yes.
Super.
So let's just get straight into it. Today, our focus is going to be on the promises that were made in the education sector, like you rightly mentioned. But of course, when you look at the 2020 manifesto, I mean the MPP manifesto, it was couched in a way that it was supposed to be a continuation of what they used to get into power in 2016. So it's more or less like a sequel to what they've been doing. So when you take a critical look at the manifesto, you would notice that for each promise that they made, they tried to indicate how far they had gone into it and what was outstanding. So what we are just doing, it's just by way of checks.
Super.
To gauge the people who are in the thick of affairs, the key stakeholders, and to find out from you on the ground what exactly it is that when you gauge your experiences with what was promised, if you have more or less, or exactly what you were promised. For tonight, we are going to focus on three things.
Good stuff.
So, on item 98 in the MPP manifesto, and let's put on record that this manifesto was christened Leadership of Service, Protecting Our Progress, Transforming Ghana for All. And this was a build upon on change, an agenda for jobs, creating prosperity and equal opportunity for all. which was the 2016 manifesto. Now, in this particular manifesto, the MPP government promised to restore book and research allowances for lecturers. Mind you, this was a very big issue before the MPP came into power.
True.
And later, I'll tell you the background to it and what may have precipitated this particular promise. Now, what we have done so far, the NPP, in 2020 said they had not only restored
the book and research
allowance, that they have increased it by 200%. And to suggest that they had not only restored it, it meant that it was taken off. But is that really the case? We'll find out very soon. They also promised to integrate school sports as part of school activities. And what they said they had done was that free PE kits are being provided to students under the Free Senior High School program. Mind you, this Free Senior High School was the flagship program of the MPP. The third one we're looking tonight is the establishment of a fund for research and innovation. And this ties in closely with the book and research allowances. When we get to the breakdown, you understand how this will play out.
Fantastic.
And what they had done then, according to the manifesto, was that the Research and Innovation Fund bill was gazetted and that it was going to be laid before Parliament. Now let's go back to start from the top. Restore of book and research allowances for lecturers. Question is, what were they restoring? Is it the case that the book and research allowance was scrapped by the previous administration?
That's what it suggests. No, if you're restoring something, it means that it was taking off.
Well, so there's a background to this. Before the NDC left government, there was an attempt to replace the book and research allowance by what they called was going to be a research facility. In other words, they wanted to set up a fund so that lecturers who were interested in research could apply to get funding, rather than all lecturers getting an allowance on a monthly basis for purposes of research.
Right.
That was fiercely resisted. However, before the NDC left government, there's evidence to show that they paid the book and research allowance for the 2015-2016 academic year.
I see. So even though there was a conversation to replace it, the payment was ongoing.
And in fact, that proposal was captured in the 2014 budget, read by Setekwe, who said there were plans to replace the book and research allowance with the research facility. That was resisted, led by UTAC, and that never came to light before they left office. But this was a letter indicating that book and research allowances was paid with the various sums of money.
I see. So I see in the, as in the screen, Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Book and research
allowances for tertiary institutions. 24th March 2016. Now, approval is hereby given for payment of book and research allowances to eligible senior members of the tertiary institutions for 2015-2016 academic year. The rates for the payment of these allowances are as follows. So you would see in there, book allowance, $1,500 for senior members, $1,500 for senior members in polytechnics. Then you have 500 cedis for research allowance for universities, that's senior members, and 400 cedis. And now, Alfred, something will interest you here.
Tell me.
Now, at this time, this computation was supposed to be done in accordance with the Bank of Ghana exchange rates. And guess what the exchange rate was at the time?
How much?
3.8479.
So at that time, there was 3 cedis, 85 pesos.
Less than 4 cedis.
Less than 4
So
cedis.
when you see the $1,500, you may be tempted to imagine it in today's terms, to think there's going to be a lot of money.
12 cedis, 50 pesos by 1,500.
Yes. So when you do the computation and add it to their, the book and research allowance together and divide it by 12, because they pay this on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
For the senior members, they're getting approximately 500 cedis, and the junior staff
500 cedis a month.
Yes, a month.
Research
Yes,
allowance.
a month. And the non-senior members are getting something 480 thereabouts.
This was as of 2016.
This was signed by
Kesla Tofosi.
Yes.
Who's now the minority leader.
On the basis of this, it cannot be said that the book and research allowance then was scrapped, for which reason a promise had to be made for it to be restored.
I see.
Of course, there was an additional promise made for it to be increased to increased by 200%.
And you know,
so what it means is that this promise, right from the word go, was premised on an inaccurate premise. And this was carried on to Parliament by then Minister for Education, who had made claims that the NDC had scrapped book and research allowance, and they came to restore it and increase it by 200%. Ranking member on the Education Committee did not take it lightly. He put him to strict proof that no, we did not scrap book and research allowance. So,
see, very interesting detail, and it's good that you put this in some good context. And I think
but it's important for us to know what the situation is now. But for that, it wouldn't come from me. I mean, the horses.
It has to come from
the horses' own mouth.
A lecturer.
Yes.
And he's not just a lecturer, but also the exec director of the Institute for Education Studies, IFES, Dr. Peter Pate Anti, is joining us on Zoom. He's been watching you, as a matter of fact, because I kept seeing him sneak to go and watch the TV and back. Dr. Peter Anti, good evening.
Good evening, Alfred.
Thank you. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. So first of all, let me establish this. Have your book and research allowances been increased by 200% over the period?
Thank you once again. I think the percentage the percentage might not be 200. Of course, you know, you are dealing with an exchange rate that is not stable. So if you look at it from that perspective, you would realize that there's been a substantial increase because of the depreciation of the cedi. But in percentage-wise, it will not be 200%. I think it should be around 80 to 90% based on the exchange rate. But of course, if you are maintaining the same exchange rate that we had in, let's say, 2016, then you would be able to really compare how much you are earning. But in the event that the exchange rate is not stable and is now it's always increasing, you would think that the money has increased, but in reality, it's not that substantial.
Essentially, what this means is that even though there's been some increase, the exchange rate differentials has been to your disadvantage, so that if you were given an increase of, say, even 100%, to the extent that now $1 is what, 12 cedis, 50 pesos, it certainly has eroded the increase in percentage in terms of monetary terms, correct?
No, it really has rather increased it. You see, because you're supposed to be paid, I mean, the research book allowance is paid in dollars, right?
Right.
It's in dollars. So if one cedi is equal to $1 and you were giving $150, assuming in 2016, that is 150 Ghana cedis. Okay. Now, if the same $1 is now equal to 10 Ghana cedis, then you see that there's a substantial increase in the amount of money that you're going to get in the cedi equivalent. But that doesn't mean that there has been an increase in the amount of money that they're supposed to pay you. I hope you get the point I'm trying to make.
Differentials has led to an increase, but not necessarily a percentage increase.
Yeah, so somebody would say that, oh, you have increased it because when you convert it to cedis, it's a lot of money. But in reality, you really increase anything. It's just because your currency is not doing well. And that is why you are experiencing what you're experiencing.
I see. But if you say it's not 200% as yet, but so in terms of the increases that you have had, how much does it add up to?
Yeah, so as I said, there's a substantial increase. It's not 200. Remember, this document was produced in 2020, and we are in 2023. Oh, sorry, 2024. Of course, the last payment came in 2023. I get it to the end of the year. So if you look at it from that particular perspective, you would even see that there's been more. I mean, there's been substantial increase in that particular amount. I am yet to get around the increment. I mean, the actual percentage, but it will not be 200. But this is a 2020 document which we need to put in perspective. So if they design another document in 2024 and they come and tell us that they've increased it to this amount, then we can see the actual amounts that we are dealing with. But in 2020, I don't think it was up to 80%. No.
I see. But also about the establishment of the Fund for Research and Innovation, that promise as well. The Research and Innovation Fund bill gazetted laid before Parliament. What's the status of that?
Yes, I'm aware. I think in 2019, the bill was developed by the then Minister of Education, Honorable Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh. As to the current state of that particular bill, I'm unable to speak to it. I tried to make some checks from Parliament and from the members in the Education Committee. It seems that it's still not gone through the entire process, and because there are a lot of bills in the education field that have come out, but I think they were not able to give me concrete response as to the current state of this bill. Again, I have to state that this is the 2020 manifesto that sought to suggest that these are the things that we have done between 2017 and 2020, and therefore you should look at it and vote for us. So if I want to take this conversation a little bit further, and because we're doing education, you would see that if you take the entire MPP manifesto as my friend did, there are two sections. The first section is what my friend has looked at, and that is where they sought to present their let's say, give account of what they said they would do in 2016. They tried to give an account of that in 2020. But there's a second section that you have not touched. That second section contained 19 promises in the education sector that they said they would want to do or they would proceed further when we enter or when they win the election.
Absolutely.
Those 19 promises.
In fact,
those 19 promises.
Yes, the 19 promises, guess what? We are going to be with you every step of the way in the coming days. Okay. This is just the beginning of a long journey. And in fact, you are one of the passengers in this bus. So welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. And we're graciously appreciative of your time and also confirming a few things for us. So this is just the beginning, because we're looking at sector by sector analysis. What they said they would do, what they have done, what they haven't done, and what they are going to promise. So, because the Ghanaian people obviously need to know all of this, and we certainly don't have very short memory. We need to just recall all these things that politicians promised to us and whether they deserve the mandate going forward again. Appreciate you. Dr. Peter Partanti, thank you. Thank you so much. But we have a date again this week on the 19 promises, and we'll look at the status of the 19 promises, what has been done so far, and what they said they would do, and what has been done. Thank you. A number of lecturers have been sending Dennis messages. They say that the book and research allowance is negotiated every year. It's not like a promise to increase. So when they go for negotiation, then there's an increase as well. And then the second one as well is that, in fact, somebody gives some breakdown as well. It says it received 17,000 cedis as a new lecturer, and then last year, the person says it received 33,000 cedis annually, right? Annually, yes, every month.
Yes.
Sorry, every year. So you do the 33,000 by 12, you will get the monthly, that's money for the book and research allowance. So that's what's happening right now. Well, guess what? This is the beginning of the manifesto check here on your election command center. And we're starting with the education sector for good reason. So stay with us every step of the way. We will tell you exactly what you need to know. Coming up next after this quick break, we have an update for you on the tragic killing of the chief executive officer of the Royal Cozy Hills Hotel, popularly known as the Jirapa Dubai, in the Upper West region, where police have arrested 7 suspects so far. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. Well, welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. Now, 2 more suspects have been arrested in connection with the murder of the chief executive officer of the Cozy Hill Hotel at Jirapa in the Upper West region, bringing to 7 the number of arrests in connection with the murder of this man. The CEO, Eric Johnson, was found in a pool of blood in one of his hotel rooms on Sunday, February 11. What we have established is that it was not one of the hotel rooms, but his residence, which is just within the premises of the hotel. We understand the hotel is located on a very large place or plot of land. Now, a team of investigators from Accra were also deployed to partner with the Upper West Regional Crime Scene Management Team to ensure that the perpetrators are apprehended and prosecuted. So the 7 suspects, all workers of Royal Cozy Hills, have been detained, assisting police in investigations, and their names, as we gave you earlier here on Ghana Tonight. Richard Commodore is a forensics expert, also a fraud and security analyst. He worked with the BNI, that's now NIB, National Investigation Bureau. He's joining us. Mr. Richard Commodore, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Thank you, Alfred. Now, looking at the information so far as given by the police service, and then also some of our sources in there, the time of the crime, it's about the dawn of Sunday, and then also the fact that these persons who perpetrated the crime are reported to have driven a vehicle belonging to the deceased to escape the crime scene, and they've abandoned the vehicle somewhere within the city as well. How do you analyze this crime, the nature of this crime?
Definitely, it's one of the high-level murder cases within the Drapa region. I have stayed in WA for years, and I know Drapa so well. And I think the police went for the 7 as a result of they finding some level of elements that suspect these people left the vehicle in WA or they work with the hotel. If investigations point to that fact, that the police might be on their way, or if they pick them up as a result of suspicion, then they want to have these 7 so that they commence an investigation that could point them out to the man. But overall, what came to mind as I speak to people in WA, people in Drapa, people in Nadoli, Kadio, since yesterday, is that personal security, some personal security guarantees were overlooked. And I think our brother of Drapa let himself down. Community has let him down. And I'm hoping that the police will take actions that will make them work speedily for this particular one.
Looking at where this incident happened, what should the investigator be looking out for in investigating this? I mean, the CID, finally. Okay, so what we do is that I know a number of these, our brothers in Ghana who own hotels, and they live within the hotel premises. And so one of the things the police will be looking at for, one of the key things they'll look at for, who were the last people he spoke to within last 3 days, last 3 weeks, last 3 months, last 3 years? What was the last 3 things he said to them? What was the nature of businesses he does, and who are the business, partners of this particular person? Now, what will also be the nature of people who are so close to him, and what is the nature of conversations they have? Because it could also be a business deal that has gone bad. It could also be people who might want to take him out for a number of reasons. So the police will log in into getting closer to who does what to him, who are the people so close to him, and what exactly has been the nature of his business. To the extent that he died in Drapa, and he's also from the place, then the police will be looking out for if these 7 people they pick are people who work for the hotel or within the hotel premises. Where were they the 3 hours to the murder? 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. What has been some of the relationships they have with him? And I think if the police would do a good job and they would dispatch the crime scene from Accra, this is one of the cases the expertise of the crime scene will be needed. And they could pick the fingerprints, they could pick the foot, people's fingerprints, and their footprints could be picked out within the premises where the last person saw him and whatever happened. And they may have the police in that regard. Other than that, if the crime scene is dammed up, then it may take them a little bit longer to be able to unravel the footprints and the fingerprints and many of these things that will help them in that regard. Mr. Richard Commodore, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your thoughts as always. And it's something that we're following quite closely as well. Richard Commodore is a fraud and security consultant joining us here on Ghana Tonight. So that's what's happening. Correspondent in the area, and Ibrahim Abubakar Wangara will be updating us in our subsequent bulletins on this matter. But the hotel premises, we understand part of it, the hotel is in three phases. One part of it where this incident happened has been declared as a crime scene, with some areas, safari area as well, and an artificial lake, all within this hotel. And it's something that we'll keep an eye on and see how things play out. On behalf of the rest of the team, I want to say thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. Join us tomorrow for another conversation here on your Election Command Center. I'm Alfred Conse. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.